the question is, how do we tell a good story? Like in the simplest terms, to come back to class, because none of the magic will happen if you're not in class. And then go, God, I'll pay money to come back. Yes, indeed. And say good evening and welcome to the December webinar, Multisensory Cueing, Multisensory Languaging, Multisensory Storytelling. And we're going to do something that we haven't done for a while in the webinar sessions, but we've been doing them recently in our Saturday morning mentoring sessions, and that is use the breakout rooms tonight. So we're going to have a chance to like pair up and do a little work together to practice some of the things on multisensory cueing. And the main reason why I'm doing that is because I don't know very much about this topic, and so I have to fill in time to make it last longer. But we'll cover that. We'll go over it. Then we'll have a chance to practice it a little bit, and then do a Q&A as long as there is Q's, and I'll have some A's, and then we'll get on out of here and go make Christmas cookies or something. Before we do that, of course, we'll have the secret surprise thing that we'll do before the end of class. I don't know if she's here, but Alex helped immensely in putting the webinar together. For those of you who haven't heard yet, Alex is sort of in charge of scheduling these things now, making sure all of the announcements get out, making sure that I have little notes that I have to take with me so I know what to do. And so thank you, Alex. And I think she's here watching. And she was very instrumental in making a lot of the special things happen tonight. All right, on to tonight's topic, which is multisensory cueing or multisensory language. And multisensory cueing is a very important part of the Tai Chi Fit method. And I know that we have some instructors who are taking the training, but they're not specifically planning on using the method, but this will be really good for you anyway as a teaching tool. When we talk about a flow class, the flow classes, or we actually don't really officially call them a class. The proper terminology within the method is to call them an experience rather than a Tai Chi Fit class. It's a Tai Chi Fit experience. And the experience is something pretty specific that we're trying to drive to. And that is a transformational experience. In other words, something that has an effect on the participant that changes them and by the way, when we talk about change and transformation, in reality, it's incremental, right? They're tiny little movements, maybe unnoticeable, or maybe felt but not really seen, but they accumulate over time. And so those incremental changes add up to something really profound, as long as you can keep them coming to class, right? So this is a transformational experience, and transformational experiences happen in a cycle that is like an adventure. This is human life. We go through a series of adventures throughout human life. And those adventures teach us things. They give us experiences that we can grow from, that we can expand from. And, in the past 50 years or so, we've gotten used to talking about those adventures as a recognizable story in literature, in folklore, etc. And it's what we know as the hero's journey story. And so every Tai Chi Fit experience, every Tai Chi class that you have, that you're leading, that your people are participating in, is a microcosm of the hero's journey story. In our, we do another seminar on choreography. How many of you have not taken the choreography webinar before? Okay, so there's quite a few of you. Good. So I'll give you the brief synopsis about that webinar, because when we go through that webinar, we talk specifically about the hero's journey and how we use that motif to choreograph our classes. In the basic repertoire that you guys are learning in the basic training, that choreography, those series of combinations have been deliberately placed in that order to tell a particular story, to follow the arc of the hero's journey story, right? And this is in the basic what it's all about. So to sort of simplify the hero's journey story, I talk about there's 4 parts to the hero's journey story. Part 1 is what we call the invitation, the call to adventure. It's like a sort of subtle and not too forceful, maybe romantic in a way, kind of call to come and participate. You know, I mean, remember lived through the 70s? Prepare ye the way of the Lord. Right? Remember the Godspell? So that is the call to adventure, right? In The Wizard of Oz, dun, 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 she's running away from the evil schoolmarm on the bicycle, right? It's the call to adventure. So in some way, we're saying, come, there's something really interesting for you to participate in. That's the first phase of the journey, first phase of the story. The second phase of the story we might call the adventure begins, or the crossing of the threshold. So now you're well on you finally made your decision to go on this adventure, and you're now no turning back. You're on your way. And during this phase of the story, there are an increasing level of challenge in this story. Lots of things happen in this part of the story. You meet your mentor. You get in touch with your Merlin, with your Obi-Wan, your Gandalf, right? Shows up in your life and scratches a thing on your door and puts dwarves in your kitchen and all that kind of stuff. And then, so you meet your fellowship, your companions, your sidekicks, right? So in this story, by the way, you as the instructor are the Merlin. You are the guide, the Obi-Wan. And each individual participant in the story will see themselves as the hero of the story and see the other people in the class as their sidekicks and companions. And meanwhile, the guy standing next to them thinks he's the hero and you're the sidekick, right? But that's part of your job as the narrator, to give everybody that experience, right? And so on this journey, you gather your companions, you get a sense of being led by a wise mentor, and increasing challenge. And that looks like these combinations, these Tai Chi combinations that begin to increase in complexity and perhaps physical challenge and, et cetera, along the way. And then you enter the third phase of the story. So the third phase of the story, in Joseph Campbell terms, is called the descent into the cave, right? Dun, dun, dun. And in the Odyssey, Odysseus has to go down. He has to find a special cave and a crack in the cave and down into hell and meet all the ghosts and get the guidance just to face the terrible news. In the Odyssey, he's on his way home, just like all the other Greek generals were on their way home and not knowing what they're going to find there. And he meets one of his buddies from the war, and he's like, "What are you doing here?" And he says, "Oh, I got home and they killed me because my wife was messing with another guy, and be careful because that could happen to you." I mean, like, that's great news, isn't it? So that's what happens in that third part of the story. Everything gets really intense. Everything gets really deep. Sometimes you face things that you can't actually master this time around. You might die. But that's okay, because the death that you experience in the hero's journey story leads to rebirth, leads to a new birth, a new awakening. But let's say that you do survive the third section of the story. Then the fourth part of the story is the return, the homecoming. And in this part of the story, obviously, you feel a sense of relief and a sense of accomplishment and a sense of, you know, gratitude. I survived, right? And look, my companions are still with me. Most of them survived. And I'm so grateful to my mentor, my teacher, because it guided me along this. And most important of all, I return home, return to the village, return to the hobbit hole, whatever it is, with a lesson, with a transformation, even if it's just a tiny one, right? So that is the four parts to the hero's journey story, and every single Tai Chi Fit experience leads your participants along that story. Does that make sense? So when we talk about using Chi cueing, it's not just about getting the people in your class to make the shapes of Tai Chi. It's about guiding them along this story. It's about taking them on this narrative journey. And so the question is, how do we tell a good story? Right? Chi cueing, you know, I've talked about this before in some of our other workshops and in our other classes, is one, you know, like is developed over 30 plus years, 35 years of trying to get people, like in the simplest terms, to come back to class, right? Because none of the magic will happen if you're not in class. If I can't keep, you know, somehow involving you and engaging you. So it's really about, you know, getting you to like have this wonderful time, smile or cry or whatever it is, transform, and then go, God, I'll pay money to come back. Yes, indeed. You know, that's what Chi cueing is for. So how do we use that technique to tell a better and better story to get people to come back and take the journey over and over again, right? And so we take a look at a couple of key factors. So stories are more than just words. Stories are really about emotion. A really great story isn't just, you know, like, you know, today I got in the car and drove to the store, bought a loaf of bread, came home and had toast. That's a story. It's kind of a ridiculously boring story, but it's a story, right? But it's not a very, I mean, nobody's going to come back to class for that story, right? But if I say, you know, today I got up and I went out to my car, and my car is almost broken. My car that I rely upon to take me to work. And if I don't get to work, I don't get money, and I don't have money for bread, and I don't feed my family. So I'm hoping that my car won't die on the way, but I've got to go to the store. I go to the store and I have just barely enough money in my pocket. I have 32 cents, and the loaf of bread only costs 30. So thank God I have enough, right? Or maybe you get to there and it says the bread costs 35 cents and I only have 32 cents. But there was a beautiful, kind lady standing in the line next to me, and she gave me the extra 3 cents. And I had enough to buy a loaf of bread. And then I came home, again, the car, made it all the way home, and I had a piece of toast, which was all I had all day today, but it was good. See, that's a story. That's an emotional story. That's a story that somebody would come back and say, like, what happened next? What happened? Do you have toast all week? You know, like, that's the story. And a story that has emotion needs more than just facts, needs more than just details. It needs sense. It needs tactile sense. It needs imagery and sound and texture and emotion that is drawn up by a picture that you paint with your words. And that's the aspect that we call multisensory cueing or multisensory language. Does that make sense? So what we're going to do today, I'm going to give you a couple of examples of how I use multisensory cueing, and then I'm going to invite you guys all to break out into the breakout rooms, and I will get that set up for you. And let me just do this real quick here. All right, I've set it up for 3 to 4 people per room. We'll get there in a minute. And what I'd like you to do is to take a movement, or a combination, and sort of brainstorm some multisensory language, and then try it out, play with it, cue it in that way. Does that make sense? And darn it, I changed computers here, so I don't have it on this one, but I'll see if I can recreate it. I was going to read to you a very lovely passage by Ray Bradbury, the science fiction writer, who talked about, it was a quotation from his book, The Martian Chronicles. And in this story, he said, what does time sound like? What does time smell like? Right? And he talks about, time smells like dust. Time smells like what was that glue we used to use in like rubber cement that's now begun to harden and crumble into dust. It's rubber cement dust. Time smells like a broom that's been sitting in the corner for a long time. That's time smells like. What time sounds like. Time sounds like the creaking of a rocking chair in the corner. Time sounds like, time smells like car tires driving up a gravel driveway. Right? These are little things that, by the way, he did it much better. I'm just sort of trying to fill in, but you can go and find this quotation yourself. And then at the end of this is the character that's talking. He says he rolled down the window of the pickup truck and stuck his hand out and realized tonight smelled like time. Right? So as you're working with your partners in this, oh yes, CJ found it. If you go to the chat, she found the quotation much better than I did. I was just trying to give you a sense of what that's like. So when you're working with your partners in your small groups, you could ask yourself a question. Let's take, for example, a movement, a combination like fending off the monkeys and, parting the horse's mane, right? What does a monkey feel like? What does a monkey not, because it's too easy. What does a monkey sound like? Ooh, ooh, ooh. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about, what does a monkey represent? A monkey represents, for example, the monkey mind, right? The attachment to thought. So what does an attachment to a thought smell like? Ooh, I can see some people that your brains are working there, isn't it? Right? What does the attachment to a thought smell like? And then see if we can come up with some cueing around that. Here's an example. So when Marcus and I were in Boston this last weekend, I taught a class there, and I know what it was. I had been watching the full moon. So we were talking about the full moon. And just before I left for Boston, I was looking at the full moon here at home. And the night of the full moon, there was a little bit of haze in the air. There was a little bit of low cloud cover. Not thick, because the moon shone all the way through, but it was filtered, it was hazy. And I started thinking about that for the movement cloud hands, the cloud hand single whip combination, right? And they usually start off with something like, this hand floats down and then rises up like a cloud, and the clouds change shape. But what kind of shapes that was in my mind was something like this. The clouds are ragged across the moon, stretching and falling apart and shredding themselves like ghosts, like ghostly clouds across the moon on their way somewhere. Where the conflagration of souls, to the place where they will all meet and have some kind of jubilation. And here are all the clouds whizzing across the sky on their way to this meeting. And then they disappear for a moment and then suddenly coalesce and open and dance. You know, something of that nature. I forget what I said, something like that. But you see, it was an image that came up that had a series of different kinds of senses, a visual sense. You know, it's cold. I remember saying something about how that night was cold across your skin when those ghostly clouds sort of touch your face and gives you that chill, like something just stepped on your grave, right? So that it's not necessarily the story, although the story is a good part of it, but it's the sensory cues that you're giving when you tell that story. Does that make sense? All right. Let me just pause before I open up the breakout room and see if anybody has any questions. You can turn your own mics on and just yell out some questions, or you can do the little electronic hand raise thing, either way. Yeah, Janice. Hi. Janice.
I'm really intrigued by what you just told us with the imagery that you created for the moon. But my question is, what comes?
Whoops, say that again. I lost you, right?
What comes next? I mean,
what comes?
How do you take that piece, which is wonderful, and I mean, what would come before it? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I do. That's a great question, and there's a couple of ways that you can answer that. A couple of ways that I would use that. One way is to have a distinct narrative that you are telling from beginning to end. Like you could walk into class. Judy used to do this all the time. She had a whole series of classes last year. Every class you'd come to, she had a story that she was telling with a beginning, middle, and ending. Right? And so you could do that, and then every movement sort of added in some way to the story, or you utilized that movement and to give yourself an opportunity to create the language which would add to that story. So that's one way of doing it.
Are some of those stories recorded somewhere that we could just take a look?
I don't know if they are or not, but I'll tell you what you could do. You could encourage Judy to lay one on you. Yeah. Or just do another class that you guys could come to and.
Yeah, that'd be really great to see it actually happen.
Yeah.
You know. Yeah.
So that's one way of doing it. The other way is that consider that it doesn't actually matter if the imagery sort of doesn't flow from one image to the next, but rather the tone that you are using and the imagery that you're using matches the section of the story that you're in. And this is really the point that I was trying to make here, right? That it is a tone, it is a series of multisensory cues that match the phase of the story. So for example, if you're using a multisensory cueing in the beginning part of the class, which will correspond to the invitation to the call, right? So the language in that section, because the theme of that section is gentle, not scary, inviting, sort of almost a little bit of sexy and enticing, and you know, come, it's like I want you to come and follow me. So it wouldn't be too intense. Like you get really intense in the first part of the class, and everybody's going to go, "Whoa, dude, check out." By the same token, if you get into the third section of the class and that part of the story, that's the deep, diving into the cave kind of section, and it wouldn't match if all of a sudden you got really soft and just kind of sweet and gentle. And that does happen a lot with people because they're trying to be all Tai Chi-ish and thing. I had that experience this morning, as I often do. So when I go to my yoga class in the morning, there's this lovely young girl. She's, I don't know, 25 or something. And, we'll get into this section of class, the third quarter of class, and all of a sudden she gets really like in her heart and really, it's almost like baby talk, I'm like, this is not matching this part. All of a sudden, I'm on my back doing bridge with one foot in the air, and you're trying to like butter me up, and I'm like, it doesn't match the theme of the story. So there's a disconnect in there in the flow of the chi, the flow of the energy. Does that make sense? It's a very common kind of thing that people do. I won't even say it's a mistake. It is a missed opportunity, right? So I'm going to try to tie this together. So how do you know which way to go? How do you know if you're giving the right set of images and using the multisensory language that links all these things together? And the answer is you've got to be continually asking yourself the question, how is this affecting flow? Right? It's all because the success of your story is reflected in the continuity and then the depth of the flow state that you observe in your people. If your storytelling isn't any good, then nobody's in flow with you. And if your storytelling is good, and how do you get good at storytelling? That's your cue there, people.
Practice.
Practice, thank you. Good Lord, I thought I was going to have to go back to the drawing board. Yes, practice. It's the only thing necessary. You practice, right? So you'll get better and better at it. Does that help, Janice? Yeah, very cool. What else? Any other questions that we want to talk about before we break into our breakout rooms? Yeah, Casey.
First of all, I'm not an instructor, so excuse if the question's obvious to everybody else. But I was just wondering how you marry the storytelling with the aspect of chi, like doing certain poses for their healing properties.
So, in traditional Tai Chi and Qigong, there's an answer for that. And that is that what guides qi, so there's a phrasing in Chinese language called yi dao qi dao, yi dao qi dao. So it means that the mind arrives and then the qi arrives like in sequence. So I said, and not just my mind, but a very specific property of the mind in human beings, because my dog can't do this, but human beings can do this. And that is what's called the intention. Now, to be careful with that translation because it means something a little bit different than the English language word intention, but it's sort of this property of really focusing your desire with pure thought, et cetera, and that's intention. Now, intention starts with something called the Xin, the heart, or what we might translate as the heart mind. And so the heart mind is where stories come from, right? I begin to create an idea and an image and a narrative. So it comes out of my heart mind and then sort of through time and practice becomes intention. And intention is what guides chi. Like you can't force chi to do anything. Chi will just turn around and say, yeah, the heck with you, right? But it can be enticed. It can be sort of led. And it's influenced, you might say, by the E, the intention. So this is an aspect that's not often, well emphasized, that so doing the right shapes and doing the right exercises of Tai Chi and Qigong won't actually just automatically get you the extra Qi. It's got to be done with intention. I mean, don't get me wrong, like doing like a beginner, raw beginner, just doing the right moves will be way better off than not doing them. But if you want to get that real big bump, the tradition says you do it with intention. So part of what we do when we talk about what is the purpose behind multisensory cueing is that the part of your brain, the part of your heart mind that makes pictures is different from the part of your heart mind that says language, that interprets words and, you know, the linear linguistic properties. And so we want to spend more time with sensory input than with words. And that is what will influence the chi flow. Does that help?
Yes, no, sounds good.
It's like, oh, that was a long way to go for all that.
No, I mean, if I got it right too, it's like doing the imaging versus, say, like the language is activating different parts of your brain.
That is absolutely right. That's absolutely right. Yeah. If just the words, just the language, just the instruction were enough to actually make a difference, it's like everybody'd be a Qigong master right now because it's all written down somewhere. All I got to do is read the book, say the words, and got a bada bing, bada boom. I'm going to live forever. But that's not how it works. And so
the journey's the fun.
The journey, exactly. Exactly. All right. Speaking of journeys, let me journey you all into the breakout rooms. So I'm going to. All right. Well, I want to see if anybody would like to share some of the things that you guys came up with. First of all, I see Connie's got her hand raised. Now I have to find Connie. Where are you? There. Where? Connie, where'd you go? Wave your hand.
Hi.
There you are. Okay.
It was perfect timing that you said, let's share, because the group I was in, it was me that started this. I get tired of the sound of my own voice. And I'm afraid that as I teach and talk, I'm going to become repetitive, so that eventually the whole group is going to recite the whole thing with me. So how do you do that?
So first of all, this is a very common thing that people have a sensitivity or an insecurity or a worry about, that they're going to be repetitive, or that whether it's the choreography that they're doing or the cueing that they're making, that your students are going to get bored with it and just like be able to. The only person in your class that feels that way is you. Everybody else in your class is loving everything you're doing. Nobody's bored, and nobody's bored with your choreography. And the moment that you do, you're thinking in your head, oh, Jesus, one more sinking the chi, they're just going to boot me out of class, right? Meanwhile, everybody else in class is going, sinking the chi, thank God. Oh, I know this one, right? So don't worry. And even your cues. So the cues begin to create a familiar sound and again, an anchor, a touch point that makes them feel successful in the flow of the movements, right? We have to be careful, in fact, about introducing new things. So we introduce new cues and new language and new movements gently. Not that you shouldn't do them by any means at all, but when you do them, you're watching, you're observing, you're assessing, you're asking yourself the question, how is what I'm doing affecting flow? Right? And so, maybe I need to back off a little bit. Maybe I need to be even more gentle. Or you're watching it as like, damn, these guys are good tonight. We're just going full bore, Right? Does that make sense? So I understand your concern. Don't worry about it, because 99% of the time, it's just you that's worried, nobody else.
David,
Yes.
one of the other things that goes right along with that is I'm not a Tai Chi fit instructor. I'm new to this, but from other disciplines that I've done, as you fall into a flow yourself, part of that narrative will take on new elements.
Oh, yes.
And creativity itself.
Yes. John, I'm glad you said that. It makes me think of one thing that we haven't talked about tonight at all, and that we'll save for another evening, but I'll touch on it. Because Marcus and I were talking about this very thing when we were in Boston together. And that is the element of music. So I could teach the same choreography with literally the same cues, but have a different soundtrack to the story, and it would be an entirely new experience, right? So there are other aspects to multisensory cueing besides just you talking, right? There's all kinds of nonverbal cueing that's still multisensory, right? That's a really good point. And one of the things about music is that that's one of the things that gets me into that personal flow, that gets me there. Yeah, absolutely. All right, let me see who else has their hand raised. Yeah, Maureen. There you go.
Thank you. So I just want to make a comment. Thank you to my room crew. Tim enlightened me on something, and it just never occurred to me. I'm going to be teaching students, children, and I was not sure how to engage them. And what he suggested was eye-opening, which would be to engage them in the story and have them tell the story to me, or at least incorporate the story we want to do with the movements. And I'm not, it just hadn't thought of that.
Children especially, yeah, kids especially, you know, because they're less constrained than we grown-ups are, you know.
So
yeah.
How do you think that would it be a story that they already know, or can I take the movements and tell them what the movements are and have them create the story?
I don't know. The answer, I'm being a bit off the cuff there, but because I want to take all of you back. I'm using Maureen as a learning moment. So the answer to that question is always, how does it affect flow? That is the only answer that will be accurate in any particular instance. I couldn't predict in any way whether or not having them tell you the story or you tell them the story, like which is going to be better. I don't know, because it might actually change from, you know, session to session. But if you're paying attention, if you're assessing, if you're watching and assessing what this is doing to the flow state, that's going to give you the answer that's real and appropriate in that moment, right? There are some, like, okay, let's just think about real life. You know, some days you're going to be teaching a class and everybody's dragging ass into your class. Everybody's like, oh God, please don't make me think. Jeez, just take me. Just do something. You do it. Maureen, I don't want to think, right? And then there are other days people are going to come in and they're like, you know, yes, my brain's on fire. Oh, what a great idea. Oh, that made me think of this. You know, now some of you have already shared in the comments about experiences that you've had and exercises that you've done before and what this makes you think of. Like, some nights are like that. Does that make sense? So try it both ways. But I think it's a brilliant idea. Tim, nice work there, sir. Excellent.
You'll have something to...
Hold on one second. Hold that thought.
Okay.
Because Elizabeth Los has had her hand up and been very patient. So Elizabeth, yes.
Yes, I was thinking of you don't have to worry too much about repeating, because the people who have been there longer get so involved in their own movement that pretty soon you become part of background music and noise. And they're not listening to you, they're enjoying their own bodies.
This is true. You know, this is a really interesting comment, because I go back and forth about whether that's a good thing. But I guess, again, you know, the answer to my own internal question would be I have to watch how that's affecting flow. And I'll again give you the example of my class, my yoga class this morning. So this lovely young lady, and she's giving really wonderful cues, by the way. It's not like she's not doing a good job. But it began to just sort of drift into the background. You know, I know my yoga pretty well, and I can just do it and sort of almost anticipate her flow. But what that meant was that what she was saying was not actually adding to my experience. Does that make sense? And I thought about it this morning. It was like, you could just shut up now. You could just like hum or something. That would be fine with me, because what you're saying isn't actually adding anything to the experience. And if you as an instructor are actually talking, actually using words to do your cueing, it should always be adding to their experience in some way. If you get to the point where you're droning into the background, then maybe you need to shut up. Does that make sense? Because we don't have to talk listen, guys, when you come to my class, I talk way too much. I am, some of you know me. I am a classic overtalker. I belong to that 12-step program, for, on and on and on. That's my, yes. Anyway, Casey, yes. Oops, you're gonna have to do your own microphone there. There
Am I unmuted now?
Yes.
We actually took it as an assignment and came up with a choreography.
Sweet.
So all this work, I don't want it to go nowhere. So if you don't mind, I'll just like show because Alice doesn't have a camera.
Sure. Yes.
So we were like two Viking women, imagine the skin.
Yes.
And you've got the bow, and you can feel the wood of the bow, and you can feel the sinews in your hand.
Yes.
Your fingers up because you can feel the tension, and then you let the arrow go.
All right. Oh, this is brilliant. Wait a minute. So let's work this right now. Tell me how you said that. Tell me how you cue that.
You're starting, you're pulling back the bow.
Mm-hmm.
You can feel the sinew in your fingers,
Mm-hmm.
and you feel the tension in this finger sticking straight up that mimics the bow.
Yes.
And you're pulling back.
Mm-hmm.
You release and let the arrow go.
All right.
Pull back.
So you're on the great track here, but do you mind if I work with you on this? And this, because this is a great learning moment for everybody.
This was just a first draft, so.
First draft, okay. Okay.
Non-instructors.
All right.
We aren't English majors here.
Yes. All right. So acknowledging that, but this is great. This is great. So in writing, in a writer's workshop, we would call this telling rather than showing. Right? You're telling me, I feel the tension. I'm pulling the sinews. I feel the sinews in my finger. But that's not really feeling anything. If you were pulling this back, what would your fingers be feeling?
Yeah, like the pain of the sinew.
Yes. And so what does that feel like? Like if you were just pulling that back and you went, ow, and somebody said, what's wrong? What would you say to them?
My bow hurt me.
Okay, that's actually not a bad cue, right? Like digging into your fingers and your flesh and the bones so close to the skin in your fingers. I feel it hurting, but it's almost pulled back. I've just a little bit more, and then release. Oh, my fingers, right? So there is something sensory, multisensory.
Tactile.
Mm-hmm. It could also be right? That's also a legitimate multisensory cue. Also, ow, 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 ow. Right? Those are legitimate multisensory cues that really evoke something more than just I'm telling. And not that what your first draft came up with, I thought that was actually brilliant. But I'm like, when.
Oh yeah, no, total rough draft.
Yeah. Okay. As your editor, I'm just giving you more.
No, I've had real editors before, and like, no, you're good.
Okay.
He's a peer reviewer.
Yes, that's right. That's just helping there. No, but that was but you're on the absolute right track. See, that's
Yeah, we actually turned Crane into taking sword out of sheath,
yes.
and then Rooster as defending another attacker.
I love it. Okay, now just because we're getting close to time, I want to share with you a tool that you can all be using when you come up with these first drafts.
Yes.
Yes, okay, so this is what's known as the Taiji Fit Flow Choreography Planner. And what this is a tool that you can use to write notes to create a choreography, or you can take the choreography that we've given you for your basic routines and write it in there, and then make notes to help you tell this story better. So for example, it's broken up into these 4 sections of class: the invitation, the journey begins, the great challenge, coming home. And then here's a column for the music that I'm going to use. And sometimes I'll start the whole choreography with music. Sometimes I'll start the whole choreography with movements. So here's a place where I could write down, sinking the chi, open the door, embracing the moon, Princess on the Mountain. I could put them all there in that. And if I had music to go along with it, I could put it all into the other column over here. Direction, according to the instructions in the choreography planner, is about spatial orientation in your class. Are you staying in one place? Are you turning left and right? Are you going into the corners? That's what we mean by direction. You can also use it to say there is limited footwork, or this is a traveling, progressing movement, whatever that you want to put in there. And then over here on the far right column where it says cueing notes is where you can write some of your multisensory language. So you're thinking about the crane spreads wings and you think, oh, I have this great idea. It's like drawing a sword out of the sky, which by the way is called bajian. So it's to draw, to extend, to pull out. It gets longer, and so it's a beautiful image for the crane there. And you would write that in your cueing notes as you're making your notes for class. Does that make sense? So here, let me see if I'm going the wrong way. So this is a document that is now in your Canvas course. If you go down to the module on Chi cueing, you will be able to find this choreography notebook, and you can download it to use and to write some of your multisensory cues with. So that's in there now. It's if you are in one of the YMCA courses or the prior instructors course. I didn't get a chance to put it in there just before class. It's in the everybody else's course, so it's in there right now. I'll get that because it just takes me a minute to get it done on everybody else's, and you should have that before the end of the evening tonight. Great. All right. If you got more questions, send me an email or put it up on the one of the Facebook pages. That's a great place for us to have one of those conversations. Right now, however, I have something very special. So is Alex still here? I think she might have jumped on out. But Alex, by the way, is the one who designed this fabulous. She and Rosie designed these fabulous new shirts. By the way, I'm wearing not just the hoodie, but also the T-shirt that goes along with it. So there's both hoodies and T-shirts and cups. And I think after Christmas, there are tote bags that you can get with all that kind of good swag on it. And Alex says, tonight, after you've done your webinar, I think we should give away 5 T-shirts. I said, how about 2 T-shirts? And she said, I like the number 5. So we're going to give away 5 T-shirts. And what she's done is she's written everybody's name on a little piece of paper in here and put it in Santa's sleigh. So I'm just going to dig in there and pull out something. And I have to get over here on the right camera so that I can properly and mixing it around. And number one, the first person to receive a custom Taiji Fit All I Want for Christmas is Flow t-shirt is Melissa Nicklaw. Melissa, where are you? I know she was here. Melissa, wave your hands in the air so I can see you. There she is. All right, hold on one second. You have to say something appropriately jazzed, excited, just so that...
I'm just shocked. I never win.
I never win.
My day.
There
Never.
it is. There it is. That's you. So you will receive, and what probably Alex will reach out to you to find out the right size and whatever you want. And congratulations and Merry Christmas.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's awesome. All right, so that one down, 4 to go. I feel so like a Santa mall or mall Santa right now. Anyway, here's the second one, and it is, having my glasses on would probably help, I think. It is Ron Pfeiffer. Ron Pfeiffer. What do you, woohoo!
Nice.
You,
It's great.
you always win stuff.
They do.
Cool. So you're going to have some new Christmas Taiji Fit swag to wear. That's awesome. I want to see you on Facebook with your...
Absolutely. On Instagram, too.
Sweet. I can see you in this. This is going to look good on you, man. I can see.
Well, everything does.
That's true. Absolutely true. All right. Here's number 3. Carol Eggers. Woot woot. Wonderful.
Thank you.
Carol, will they let you wear this in class to the Y?
I wear my Tai Chi shirts well. I don't wear them as much now because they're too big for me. But I wear my Tai Chi swag there.
There you go. There you go. Because CJ, Carol actually is in San Francisco, so she could just stand up on the bluff overlooking the bridge and wear her. Yes. All right, 2 more to go. 2 more to go. This is, I have to admit, this is exciting. You know, I think if it was just 2, it'd be over too soon. So she's right.
Pins and needles up.
Ta-da! Sarah McGrail. Sarah. See, from beaming down from space, Sarah has won herself a T-shirt. That's wonderful. So, Sarah, which camp are you in? Are you in the camp of I always win stuff, or that you never win stuff?
I'm always a winner.
You're always a winner.
Yes.
That's awesome. I got to hang out with you more. Okay, one last one. And that last one is Peter Stewart. Awesome. Peter, are you still here? Where's Peter?
You have to be present to win.
I don't. I should. What we should tell it is that in order for him to win the T-shirt, he has to invite all of us to his house, because Peter lives in the Virgin Islands. So yeah, so he'll need a nice T-shirt to wear on the beach there.
And pay for airlines.
And pay for airlines. We'll see if we can get them talked into that. All right, if you didn't win a T-shirt tonight, they are available over there on some page somewhere. I just literally got these tonight to where we were tracking the shipment, like following Santa's sleigh across the sky, to see if they would get here. And fortunately it did, so I was able to wear them. I am so excited. You can tell I'm in a really good mood because I'm goofier than usual, but I really appreciate all of you being here tonight. I hope that you got maybe 1 or 2 ideas that you can use in class. again, you know, the sort of one of the takeaways that I want you to always keep in mind is that when we use 5-part cueing, that all 5 parts are absolutely critical. You have to have all 5 parts, well, with the possible exception of the safety cueing, right? You don't always need safety cueing, but the other 4 parts must be a part of every movement that you cue. Not every repetition, but every movement has to have all 5 of the parts. But the most important, the most powerful of all of those other aspects of Qi cueing is multisensory cueing. It's your opportunity to really lead people into a transformative experience rather than just a bunch of movement in a class. That's the distinction. Does that make sense? All right. Well, thank you guys again for hanging out with me.
Thank you.
Take care, you bet.
Thank you. That was fun.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Good night, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, David Dorian.
Good to see you.